My husband threw me out of our home after blindly believing his spoiled adult son's lies. But when I returned with divorce papers and undeniable proof of his affair, the arrogant father and entitled stepson's entire world collapsed before my eyes. How do you feel? Has there been an opportunity to reflect on anything yet? I faced my husband, the man who had expelled me from our home after uncritically accepting his stepson's fabrications. He carried an air of arrogance, gazing down as if possessing all knowledge. I couldn't help but chuckle. Reflect? Not in the slightest, I stated calmly, extracting a bundle of papers from my satchel. Now, kindly affix your signature here. I presented him with the dissolution documents and the legal paperwork my attorney had prepared. He maintained his composure, endorsing them without objection until his eyes met the accompanying attachments. His countenance froze, his hand quivering faintly. Beside him, his stepson, Jim, began to panic. The deceptions they had meticulously woven were now laid bare, the truth undeniably revealed. My name is Mary. I am a 52-year-old administrative professional, and my marriage had lasted a mere 12 months. I resided with my husband, Brian, and his adult son, Jim, who held a full-time job but steadfastly refused to vacate his childhood residence. I never formally adopted Jim, so for me, he remained largely a stranger. From the outset, I harbored hopes he would relocate, but Jim remained resolute. "This is my mother's house," he declared firmly. "She passed away 5 years ago, and I will not abandon the home we shared." I understood his sentiment, having lost my first husband around the same period Jim's mother departed. However, empathy did not ease the burden of his defiance. "My mom was a superior cook, but I suppose I'll tolerate this," Jim grumbled one evening, picking at the meal I had prepared with obvious displeasure. His disdain was undisguised, a constant weight on me daily. If my cooking was so intolerable, why didn't he prepare his own meals? Frustrated, I addressed my husband. "Jim clearly dislikes my cooking. What course of action should I take?" Brian simply shrugged. "Then cease cooking for him. He isn't obligated to consume it." His apathy stung, yet I heeded his advice. The next time Jim arrived home to no dinner, he erupted. "Why is there no sustenance for me? You married my father, so it is also your duty to cook for me." No matter my efforts, I couldn't prevail. Jim's remarks grew increasingly venomous, and Brian's disinclination to intervene left me feeling utterly isolated. Before our wedding, Brian had assured me Jim would soon depart. Yet, our situation remained unchanged. Jim exhibited no signs of moving. "He simply cannot afford it," Brian contended. But I knew better. Jim had inherited a substantial fortune from his late mother and had squandered most of it on extravagant purchases. His debts accumulated, evidenced by credit card statements overflowing in his room. He was not only imprudent with money, he was overtly dismissive of me. And Brian, he merely facilitated this behavior. One day, my daughter, Emma, shared exciting news. "Mom, I received a marriage proposal." Hearing her exhilaration, I couldn't help but smile. Since my second marriage, positive tidings had been rare. This truly was a moment of profound happiness. "Congratulations," I exclaimed warmly. "I am certain your father in heaven is also beaming." Memories of my departed husband flooded my mind. He had worried about our daughter's prospects until his final breath. I felt convinced he would be relieved to witness her finding contentment. "I'll introduce my fiancé soon," Emma added, then hesitated. "But must I introduce him to Brian? He's merely your second husband. He holds no relevance to me." Her words were forthright, and I couldn't fault her. Unlike Jim, she had not been adopted by Brian and shared no connection with him. "Just offer a brief greeting," I gently suggested. "It needn't be more elaborate than that." When I informed Brian of Emma's engagement, he barely reacted. His indifference pained me, but it wasn't unexpected. He had never displayed much concern for Emma. Later, Jim sneered. "Why don't you simply divorce Dad and live with your daughter? You probably detest living with us anyway." Shocked, I sought Brian's backing, but as usual, he exited without a word. Annoyed, I retorted to Jim, "Do you not have someone special in your life? Why don't you marry and grant your father some tranquility? Jim scowled and departed without responding. He seldom spoke of romantic relationships, and I doubted he had anyone. The notion of him marrying and bringing a spouse into the house filled me with apprehension. Do you think Jim will remain here even after marriage? I inquired of Brian one evening. Leave it to Jim, he stated flatly. I am unconcerned either way. His apathy enraged me. Eventually, I met Emma's fiancé. Brian declined to attend. I don't care about that. Do not extend a wedding invitation to me either, he said chillingly. Emma's fiancé, however, was Jim's absolute antithesis, mature, kind, and responsible. He was approximately Jim's age, but carried himself with significantly more poise. You've found an exceptional man, I told Emma, genuinely relieved. Compared to him, Jim appeared even more pathetic. If circumstances become difficult with your husband and his son, you are always welcome to reside with us, her fiancé offered kindly. His remark provided a sense of comfort I hadn't experienced in years. Upon returning home, Jim greeted me with disdain. A housekeeper should not be tardy. Dad and I are famished. Hearing him label me a housekeeper stung, but Brian feigned ignorance. Compared to Emma's fiancé, both Brian and Jim seemed utterly useless. Meanwhile, Brian began disappearing each weekend. I'm assisting a friend whose mother is hospitalized, he explained. I did not believe him. When I confronted him, asking, Is this friend a woman? He panicked, denying it with excessive haste. His conduct only intensified my suspicions. Jim observed the tension and found satisfaction in it. Dad likely regrets marrying an older woman such as yourself. Perhaps he wishes he had wed someone younger. You're going to be betrayed and expelled. Poor thing. His words wounded me, for deep down, I feared their accuracy. Why not just abandon Dad and depart before things become complicated? Jim added smugly. That was the moment I realized I could no longer endure this existence. I frequently pondered if Brian intended to replace me with his paramour. Just as I was sinking deeper into these thoughts, Emma telephoned. Mom, I need to speak with you. Can you come over? She asked, her tone serious. Concerned, I hastened to her residence. Her fiancé, Jack, was also present. What is the matter? Do not tell me you are canceling the wedding, I said anxiously. They both offered awkward smiles. Why would we call off the wedding? This pertains to you, not us, Emma clarified. Relieved, I was still taken aback by their subsequent disclosure. Jack presented his phone and inquired, Is this your husband, Brian? Initially, I did not recognize him, but then I noticed the young woman beside him addressing him by name. After scrutinizing the photograph, I realized it was indeed Brian, wearing attire I had seen previously. The image was captured at a wedding venue, and they were discussing their own marital arrangements. I was rendered speechless. Brian had no offspring other than Jim, so the young woman could not possibly be his daughter. The inconceivable truth struck me. He was planning to wed another woman while still legally bound to me. That woman appears far too youthful to be Jim's girlfriend. Wouldn't you agree? Emma asked. I recollected Brian's recent dubious conduct and admitted, I had suspected he might be unfaithful, but I never imagined he would be involved with someone so young. Emma and Jack were astonished. I recounted everything. Brian's evasive behavior, his frequent absences, and my growing misgivings. Your husband is despicable. We must thoroughly investigate and ensure he accepts responsibility, Jack stated firmly. You need to divorce him immediately, Mom, Emma added. I concurred, but understood we required irrefutable proof first. Jack began researching private investigators. Do not fret about your future, Mom. You can come live with us, he reassured me. Feeling supported, I returned home with renewed resolve. Jim greeted me in his usual manner. Hurry and prepare dinner. Housekeepers should not be out so late, he uttered dismissively. His words stung, but I silently cooked. I refused to let him witness my distress. Once I possessed evidence of Brian's affair, I would leave. If Brian remarried, Jem would have to depend on his new stepmother, and I knew he could not treat her with the same disrespect he showed me. When Brian arrived home, I decided to test him. Will you be attending our daughter's wedding? They are holding it at a prestigious establishment, I said casually, mentioning the venue's name from the photo. His face momentarily stiffened before he denied any knowledge of the place. That reaction confirmed my suspicions, but I did not press the issue further. Then Brian shifted the conversation. Jim hasn't asked you for funds, has he? He's been facing financial difficulties. I shook my head. Jim had never requested money from me. He only perceived me as a housekeeper. He's been badgering me despite inheriting a substantial sum from his mother. He squandered it all, and now he's seeking my assistance, Brian continued. I thought of the debt collection notices I had seen while tidying Jim's room, but I remained silent. I could not bring myself to confide in Brian, not when he was likely engaged in infidelity. Besides, I feared Jim's response if he learned I had discovered his debts. Housekeeper or not, I've heard nothing of the sort, I said instead. Brian sighed. Can't you speak with him? Advise him to stop his wasteful spending. I was astounded. Jim doesn't heed me. You are his father. You should address him. But Brian persisted. Don't be so unkind, please. I am not adept at handling difficult conversations. His insistence only deepened my disappointment. The next day, he reiterated his request. Have you discussed the money with Jim yet? What was his response? When I informed him I had not, Brian became angry. What are you doing? You must speak with him right away. Weary of his constant nagging, I resolved to focus entirely on collecting proof of his extramarital relationship. Once I had it, I would finally be free of both Brian and Jim. Reluctantly, I approached Jim. Your father is concerned about your expenditures. He asked me to remind you to be more judicious with money. I attempted a neutral tone, but Jim erupted. Who do you believe you are, housekeeper? It's my money, and I will spend it as I please. It is none of your concern. I understood why Brian avoided this discussion. Jim was impossible. Still, I couldn't help but wish Brian, as his parent, would manage it. Instead, he overlooked his son's shortcomings and pursued his lover. Jim glared at me with animosity. I will ensure you are thrown out of this house. Just wait. His words stung, but I reminded myself, once I possessed proof of Brian's disloyalty, I would depart on my own terms. A few days later, Emma called. Mom, we have the evidence. Can you meet us at a restaurant? My heart sank. Was it true? Had he genuinely cheated on me? Emma's voice was resolute. Yes. He has been seeing a woman considerably younger than you. They are even seeking a new residence together. Jack handed me the investigative report, replete with irrefutable photographs of Brian and his mistress. You must divorce him immediately, Jack advised. This woman is suspect. She spends lavishly and might be involved with other men besides your husband. She could be plotting to take his money and abandon him. Hearing this, I grasped the extent to which Brian had fallen into her machinations. They had even visited a wedding venue. She might have already obtained funds for preparations. I knew I had to act swiftly. When I returned home, Brian and Jim were in the living room. Mary, come here. We need a discussion, Brian said sternly. Jim smirked. You've been seeing a younger man, haven't you? Dad saw you at a restaurant with him. He displayed a blurred photo of me with Jack. Caught red-handed. How mortifying, dating someone your daughter's age. That is Emma's fiancé, and she was with us, I stated calmly. But Brian would not listen. Jim caught you in the act. You've been unfaithful, haven't you? Leave this house. We will address the divorce and finances later. I nearly laughed at his conceit. Very well, I said. I'll depart. We'll discuss the divorce and financial matters subsequently. As I walked toward the door, Jim yelled, Prepare us dinner before you go. I'm hungry. Even then, his sole concern was food. I disregarded him and left, proceeding directly to Emma's home with the investigation report. 3 weeks later, Brian finally contacted me. Let's convene and discuss matters at the house. Bring the divorce papers. On the day of the meeting, I arrived with Emma, Jack, and our lawyer. Brian's face paled upon seeing us. Why did you not come alone? He stammered. You never specified I had to. I responded. The house was already squalid after only 3 weeks without me. Even with all these individuals, you will still pay alimony, Brian sneered. I chuckled. I have committed no wrongdoing. Sign these. I presented him with the divorce papers. Brian froze. Why am I paying alimony? You are the one who cheated, he protested, again brandishing the blurry photo. Our lawyer calmly presented him with the investigator's report. We possess proof of your affair. Brian's face turned ashen. Jim was stunned into silence. I cannot afford alimony. I am penniless. I borrowed money for the wedding and honeymoon, Brian confessed. Jim's true intentions then escaped him. You're not actually remarrying, are you? I don't want to forfeit half of your inheritance. But Brian shook his head. I already spent all of Mom's inheritance. Jim collapsed in disbelief. Dad, can't you loan me some money? You must have something left, correct? I am broke, Brian whispered. I reminded them both. Jim, I discovered debt notices in your room. At your age, requesting your mother to clean your room is shameful. Our lawyer presented the alimony documentation, and Brian reluctantly signed them. Jack added, I heard your mistress is squandering your money and seeing other men. Brian turned white, frantically attempting to call her, but she did not answer. Mary, I am truly sorry. Do not abandon us, Jim pleaded. Dad is never home, and I am weary of consuming fast food. I shook my head. Address your father's new spouse. You will have a young housekeeper soon enough. And with that, I exited for the final time. We proceeded directly to the city hall and initiated the divorce proceedings. I relocated to Emma and Jack's place. It was somewhat confined, but we intended to move to a more spacious residence shortly. A few weeks later, I learned Brian's mistress had defrauded him, absconding with a considerable sum for a wedding that would never materialize. He was left with nothing but liabilities. Jim even telephoned me, pleading for assistance. Mom, Dad moved out, and I have nowhere to go. I am not your mother, I reminded him coolly. We are not related, and I have divorced your father. When he continued to harass me, Jack threatened to report him to the authorities. That finally deterred him. Life with Emma and Jack was serene. Soon, we received wonderful news. Emma was expecting. I was overjoyed to become a grandmother. For the first time in years, my life was finally improving, and I was resolved to cherish every moment with my cherished family.